We like to talk a little bit in some of our joint presentations about taking that reinvention to reimagining. And one of our key customers, Stephen mentioned Mesquite Independent School District, which I'll be focusing in on today as a case study, really talks about thinking inside the box, right? The box in education is real. Dr. David Vroomland talks about this. We're not trying to get away from standards, but for the first time in history, we have the ability to leverage some pretty insane technologies to really drive toward our purpose and our mission as opposed to just our strategy. So thinking about the box itself, how can we live in it and not get outside of it where we get into trouble, but really leverage tools like GCP, some of its inherent tools like AI, like ML, to really get to that next level of tailored learning. So what do we mean by EDU Reimagined, right? Well, when we think about the world and how it's changed, nobody goes to work anymore in a horse and buggy, or very few people do, right? We take cars and we take planes, and we do now virtual meetings. So why not think about EDU in a different light, right? And we think about this new normal and what's next and what's going to happen and how does it happen? Well, what is the new normal or the next normal as we go back to school, back to using physical space? And so I think that the door is open to start thinking about some things differently. And one of the things that I think we've got an opportunity to do, and Dr. Vroomland and Dr. Rivera down in Mesquite talk about this all the time, is really diving back in introspectively into what's your district's mission. Is your whole team aligned with it? What happens if we took the ideas from the student body, the teachers, the administration, the principals, everyone that has an input, parents, community, and got it into one pot to where we could really start to get some holistic views into what's best for the students and put them really in charge of their futures. So this is going to be a little bit more of a story. I don't know that I'll take Jimmy Fallon's approach here, but certainly we have a storyboard that I'm going to share that talks about a fictitious student and how AI and ML positively impacted that student and their journey, and give hopefully some thought-provoking moments to how your individual districts and individual situations might be impacted positively by going through this process. So when we first engaged with Google and Mesquite, there had been some work done on reinventing and really getting into the next phase of leadership and education in Mesquite. And it really broke down to 4 components, right? There was a purpose, it was to be inclusive, it was to investigate and then execute. And the purpose was really the first most challenging thing. It was everybody kind of knew what or had a sense of what they wanted to do, but really had to dive in and define it. And then most importantly, create an environment where you could live into it. Being inclusive was key, bringing in all stakeholders, not just leadership, not just the digital innovation folks, and not just curriculum folks, but really canvassing the entire community and the entire ecosystem. Then there was an investigation process of making sure that the right partners were at the table. And we say partners rather than vendors, because it really has taken the expertise of Mesquite as educational leaders, the expertise of Google as a technology leader, and then the expertise of Softserve as an integrator to pull this off, right? At no time did anybody in this mix decide that Softserve didn't decide it was going to be an educational leader. When we had a question about education, we partnered with Mesquite to draw that information out. And the same with Google, and it's become a really great symbiotic relationship. So they came up with their mission statement, and I encourage everybody to make sure that you have this and that you've really dug into it and that it still suits your purpose today, because when you go down the road of what's possible with artificial intelligence and machine learning and cloud environments, really the question is not what's possible, it's does it fit what I want to do? So having a clear vision of what you want to do is critical. So along the way, we had some going from why to how. Right, so we knew why we wanted to do it. We knew that we wanted to embolden, or Mesquite knew they wanted to embolden and empower their students, have their students own their data, have them really live into their purpose as a district, but ultimately identify those paths for those students where they could really have a great impact on their own lives. And then pick the right curriculum or have the right curriculum suggested to them so that they took the right courses, that they learned the right way. And on top of that, that there was a coaching opportunity for teachers as opposed to just teaching to the standard, right? AI gives you the ability to have, hundreds of thousands of eyes looking at different data points, where a teacher only has those interactions that they encounter on a daily basis. So before we go into the Sara story in earnest here, this was something that really kind of served as an overarching theme, where learning and innovation go hand in hand. The arrogance of success is to think that what you did yesterday will be sufficient for tomorrow. Again, we're at that point in time where our students really are used to hitting one button and getting what they want. They speak in characters, not in sentences. And so how can we be successful teaching them the ways that we all learned and our parents learned and our grandparents learned? So how do we get started? Let's take a look at what Sara is up against. So Sara is right now today a happy student at the Harrington School of Nursing at Baylor. She's a hardworking student. She studies hard. She likes to be involved. She balances life and school, and overall, she's a thriving student. She has a dream of becoming a triage nurse. She loves helping people, solving problems. She wants to dedicate her life to doing both. She's working for her BSN, and she's looking forward to earning her emergency nursing certification. How did Mesquite prepare her for this future? Well, let's take the 1980s wavy screen approach and flashback. Sara, as a freshman, was an artist. She was the artsy kid. She did really well with creative tasks and visual arts. Her teacher and her school counselors had the same idea because creativity was Sara's primary passion. And this is critical because we want to look at how we can overlay passion with aptitude to come out with new results. So if we look at data analytics, MISD would have a rich historic view of Sara going way back to her first days in elementary school, and then take into account all of the usage that's been aggregated through Google Classroom, Workspace, and other data inputs. Some of what that looks like here, you can see Ed5 standard data is in the purple, and then any additional data points are more in the goldish yellow there. So we're looking at things like family and demographics and grades and field trips, pulling that data in, as well as creative lessons and extracurriculars, activity recognition, and the list goes on and on. As you saw in Jesus's presentation, plenty of data points can be readily integrated leveraging GCP essentially out of the box. So this is just representative and illustrative. There's hundreds of points that could be on this slide. So if we look at Don, who is her guidance counselor, Sara's guidance counselor, he's looking at a passion, right? He looks at this map and he says, we know that Sara's artistic. Do we also know that she's investigative and she's social, slightly enterprising? We wouldn't call her very realistic or conventional, but this is her passion map. And we're able to take in these data points and visualize them in such a way that gives an indicator to folks who are looking. So the guidance counselor is looking, sees a passion for the arts. So he starts to recommend a roadmap, which emphasizes creativity and learning in kind of unstructured settings. Well, in one example for today's story, we have a biology teacher, Alison, that is making sure that the recommended roadmap aligns with Sara and her parents. She takes into consideration all the full study load predictions and other MISD recommendations, standards, and what have you. And knowing that Sara's passion is in arts and creativity, she knows that she needs to foster that, right? Maybe we're going to take an individualized approach to how Sara learns biology, since science has not, thus far, really applied to her or been a strong suit. Well, it turns out that Sara excels in this coaching environment. She enjoys being coached. She loved how her teacher related to her. She starts to excel, outperforming even her art-related classes. Well, as the grades are coming in, data analytics detects the new trend in her performance, and an alert gets triggered. Now, the alert can go to her teacher, her parents, all the people who are concerned with Sara's well-being and her education, in particular, Don, the guidance counselor. So Don gets these insights, and the name of MISD's platform is IO, Their goal is to turn it into an open source platform, which we can follow up on post-webinar. Feel free to reach out to Dr. Brunland in Mesquite. But the insights show that she displayed an unusual performance spike, right? And we can see that this is a 97% in biology, and that's an outlier, right? You can see on the graphic under roadmap correlation. So this was her first solid proof of interest in life sciences. IO's predictive analysis suggested a passion pivot and recommended that we adjust the roadmap for Sara. Don needs to talk to Sara about these to help her identify this passion. And these are some visualizations of what the platform looks like, where you can see there's a gamification under her SMART profile. There's points that are earned. We can see the trend analysis, her performance versus others. And with the opportunity for improvement, we go from an 84% success rate in the bottom right corner to a potential 96%. And then there's the opportunity to optimize the roadmap. Well, Don counsels Sara, and realizing that her love of the arts has built a growing level of empathy in her. We've now identified a new interest and an aptitude inside of biology. Perhaps there's an opportunity now beyond visual arts, and maybe there's something in the possibility of creating solutions to some life-threatening problems. Looking at the ML-driven recommendations from the platform, Don sets up three different versions of what her roadmap might look like, and we get to see those on the screen. Health and science now has jumped to 96% as the front runner, rather than 87% to visual communication. What's key here is that I think what's most important is that Sara is being given this information to make decisions. Her parents are getting this information to make decisions. This is not meant to be prescriptive. This is meant to give insight and deeper learning. Alison, the teacher, is notified. She corrects her lessons plans. She pulls up a new study roadmap. The systems also identify possible extracurriculars that can help Sara. And so her lesson plan gets adjusted. She gets suggested field trips, for instance, that she might consider, and can go deeper, faster into her curriculum in the future. Her parents get notified with the same information, so they're aware and they can be active participants. Very important here that the parents are now more engaged and can understand maybe how to relate to their child better, right? What's going on at school? We often ask our children, and they say everything's good. Yeah, it's great. Sara, too, is empowered right there in her handheld. She has an app that she can access. She can weigh in on what she likes, doesn't like. She can gain points by checking in and being aware and being proactive. Everything is gamified on a small goal level. So every time she achieves something, she gets points. And we can have leaderboards and things like that. Well, the rubber starts to meet the road as Alison, the biology teacher, arranges field trips. She checks the AI platform. She sees the community institutions that have volunteered to help students. So Sara goes off and gets to see Dr. Alvarez at Dallas Regional Medical Center, which had a huge impact on her as she loved the unstructured setting. She loved the creativity, the opportunity for creativity and empathy, and the challenges faced in the emergency room. Sara comes back from her field trip and really starts to thrive. She understands her calling, her passions are aligning with her aptitudes, and now she's really on the fast track to getting to where she wants to go. She's been accepted to several nursing schools. She's got applications in with others and showing great progress. Well, of course, Sara, because this is a good story, graduated from Mesquite High School with honors. The AI platform also was able to match her to the best school for her, right, based on inputs potentially that came from universities. All of this happening through the GCP environment, quickly making recommendations, quickly adapting, taking into account more and more data sources. Very important here is that her K through 12 data was exported into her Google Drive. So now she can access it. She can use it as kind of a precursor maybe to a LinkedIn, just as an example, to start building out even more of a network before she has a network, if that makes sense. So getting into just a little bit of Softserve and how we got to the point of being able to create this environment for Mesquite, it was really all about design thinking and transforming education through understanding a 360-degree view of everything, all the impact points. There's the notion of, is it desirable, right? From a human standpoint, do you like this? Is this what you want to do? And we have to decide together what that looks like. Another question is it viable? From an organization standpoint, can you handle this? Are you ready for it? Is your infrastructure ready to go? And more importantly, are your people and processes in place? And we worked with Mesquite to make sure that they were. And then from a feasibility standpoint, is the technology roadmap that you have on course for this type of transformation? And if not, what do we have to do collectively, us plus Google, plus other partners that you may have? What do we have to do to get you there? And what does the roadmap look like? And the fact is that everybody's journey is different. And we know that, and so we have to be flexible. This gives you an idea of kind of the approach, and you see a lot of circles on these slides, and I think that's very important to understand that anybody who's going down an AI ML journey really should consider strongly having an ongoing research and continuous development approach, where you're constantly checking and double checking where you are against your mission, against your purpose, making sure that it truly does map to exactly where you want to be. This isn't a journey you want to go on and pick your head up in 12 months and say, oh, we missed that. So there's constant check valves, if you will, and checkpoints along the way to make sure that we are still holding to the mission, that the desired results are happening in small bites, which eventually lead to the big success. Getting started is easier than you would think. Obviously, it starts with a conversation. Right now, Google is working with us on some micro workshops where it's a 4-hour first day, 4-hour second day, where we're getting into the measure twice, cut once, help you understand where you want to go. Once we engage, there's a technical discovery. We move toward a quick proof of concept to prove that it all works, and then get some type of minimum viable product in the wild as a first release.